Hello, welcome to Free Will, Science, and Religion. I'm Chandler Klebs, and I'm here with Mitch J., George Ortega, and Jamie Soden. And today we were going to talk about an issue that Jamie's been having that's upset him emotionally. Somebody made some false accusations about him and accused him of all kinds of stuff. So perhaps Jamie can explain precisely what exactly happened so.
And Chandler, I just wanted to interject, and then we're going to kind of like apply this no free will philosophy to help him overcome the frustrations.
All right. Where do I begin? All right, I'm not going to say all of it because Red's 91, right? She and I are on good terms, and I don't want to bring up our arguments into this podcast because that's done and dusted, and it should be forgotten about because I've moved on from that. But as to the other thing with Matt's FTR and one of his friends who have been accusing me of really stupid and insane shit. Excuse the language there. About the obesity comment, when I said a pedophile is only worse than an obese person or someone with some other illness if they commit a crime. Otherwise, if they're not predisposed to commit any offending, here's the key word, predisposed, because we know free will is an illusion. If they're not predisposed to committing criminal offences, then that automatically means that they're harmless. And if they're harmless, how can they do any more harm than a drug addict or an autistic or a schizophrenic, who doesn't commit crimes themselves? I'm basically saying they're on an equal level. Does that mean that I'm saying that they don't need help? No, I'm not saying that. But this is a mental health issue. It's nothing to do with the criminal justice system. It only has something to do with the criminal justice system once they've broken a law, right? There's a difference. And I tried to point out to Matt FTR and made examples why you shouldn't punish people for thought crimes, because if you're going to punish people for thinking about one crime, then why not punish someone for thinking about armed robbery, terrorism, murder, genocide, the whole list of things. There seems to be a double standard in society when it comes to paedophilia. And people seem to, think the word is synonymous with sex offender for some reason. And also, I think Max was totally wrong for saying that I was likely to be a paedophile myself, because I'm not, and I'm not.
And who is Matt?
He's just someone I got into an argument with on Facebook a while back.
All right.
Yeah, he basically said those who defend pedophiles are likely to be pedophiles themselves. Now, I'm not sure if he's talking from experience or whether he's just talking out of his back behind, but the fact of the matter is, Chandler and George Ortega will pretty much say the same things as I would when it comes to thought crimes. Does that mean that you three are pedophiles? No, of course not. But it really frustrated me when he came out with his stupid statements.
Jamie, relate. So, like, you understand that there's no free will, but it's one thing to understand that, and it's another thing to put it into practice. So, can you describe how this kind of like emotional free will response to them is kind of like directing your anger and frustration toward them? Because I think that's what's happening.
Yeah, I mean, it's had an effect on me emotionally. I mean, he apologized to other people on Twitter for making false assumptions about them, but he never apologized for what he did to me. If he had apologized, and I said this to Anthony's brother as well, if he had apologized, I'll wipe his slate clean and that'll be the end of it. I'll just move on from it. But the fact that he hasn't apologized for it, it's still a deep wound, because I don't like dishonesty. I don't like double standards or hypocrisy, and people especially have double standards when it comes to the kind of things that me and Chandler have been talking about.
And Jamie, a lot of that is because we're talking about some serious stuff. And I actually think, Jamie, that it's actually good in a way. Like, I think you were right in the stuff you've been saying. It's just that people aren't really getting it. And because of the fact that they still believe that they're in the right, and they think that you are, in their crazy minds, they might think that you are a pedophile, and they think a pedophile is the same as a child molester. So in their paranoid minds, they think they're right.
Or they think a pedophile is automatically a child pornographer. No, there's even pedophiles that don't even do that. Believe me, there are. And you know, there's self-admitted ones on Twitter, like the one I told you about. He even said himself that he doesn't look at that stuff because he believes it's wrong, which is correct. It is wrong, which is why we need deterrence for that sort of stuff. But you know, people just get irrational about this, especially over that Jack McClellan case that I was talking about with Sean Gawler a while ago. I mean,
But Jamie, focus on your feelings about it instead of like this. We've got the general, so that they're saying things about you that aren't true, and like so, like you know, in other words, like what can you do to kind of like to not blame them, to kind of like understand like they're blaming you, they're misrepresenting you, but it's not them who are doing it. It's not up to them, you know. So like, how address that aspect of it.
well, I'll have to I'll have to change my lifestyle a bit and reassure myself that you know even they don't have a free will, and I have to try my best not to you know get angry at them you know for what they're doing. But what Matt and his friend did a while back was just so wrong, so disgusting that it's hard to ignore. You know.
I think, like, I mean, I understand your frustration here because nobody likes having people falsely accuse things about them or even misunderstanding what they say. I mean, I understand, that it's not really up to these people.
And you understand it better than I do.
They're misunderstanding you because you know what? They've been taught stuff. They've been taught that a pedophile and a child rapist are the same thing. They've been taught that they have free will and that people choose do to feel and think and do what they do. So the problem is that means that they are going to blame and accuse you of things, and make you out to be the bad guy, even though that's not the case, But they do that because they're trying to make sense, of the world and events that are happening, under a mistaken paradigm, which is the free will belief and just wrong definitions of what words mean too.
Yeah, and on that video about Jack McClellan, there was a one that I said told you about months ago, where this guy was telling people the differences between a molester and a pedophile, because a pedophile is not necessarily a criminal. It only becomes criminal when they.
Allow me to jump into the discussion.
Yeah,
This is an issue that we've discussed a little bit. This issue that Nietzsche pointed out in his writings, when human beings try to give agency to action. As you pointed out, Jamie, we can't control what we are attracted to. We can't control what we are sexually attracted to.
yeah,
However, we can still say if a certain activity has been done, that is not a good activity. It is a
of
problem,
course,
and
of
we
course.
don't want that activity to occur. So that's how I think we have to think about pedophilia. We can't blame someone for being attracted
Yeah,
to young children. We
yeah.
can't even
We have to.
blame some.
We
We
have
can't even
to
blame someone. Sorry, go ahead. Say it.
but we still have to take steps to make sure that they don't go into offending.
Right.
Like if someone's a self-admitted pedophile, I still believe that there should be watchdogs keeping an eye on them. You know what I mean? There should be sting operations, making sure that they're not exploiting people and this sort of thing. That's good. You know, I'm glad that these sort of systems are in place. What I don't get is when people are blamed for thought crimes, because this is just totally irrational. I mean, you may as well, say that homosexuals are evil because you're blaming someone for an attraction in that case. Thought crimes, you know what I mean? And homosexuality is not even a crime. It's just, even in the case of couples, as long as it's consensual, who cares if a gay couple get married or have sex or whatever? It has no real detrimental effects to anyone. But when it comes to pedophiles, as long as they're not, you know, molesting kids or
Well, okay, but just to clarify for
yeah,
listeners, what we're saying here, you don't blame the person. We have
mhm,
this. What we do, what free
mhm,
will believers do,
yeah,
is that we create something extra. We say
yeah,
there's everything is in the universe. Everything that's here is here. If that makes any sense. And yet we say there is something beyond that, which is a direct contradiction. to say that everything is everything. You can describe yourself as a materialist or a naturalist, whatever word, whatever terminology you're comfortable with. But the gist of it is that once you have listed all the things that exist,
Mm-hmm.
that is all that exists. And the
Mm-hmm.
only thing that happens is cause and effect, right? Determinism.
Mm-hmm.
Things happen and cause other things to happen. And
Yeah.
all that exists is what exists. So relating that to this topic, the point is that we shouldn't blame a pedophile for being a pedophile because that we
Of
can't
course.
do anything about it. But we can say pedophilia isn't a good thing, and we can take steps to stop pedophilia. And pedophilia in particular is wrong because young
Yeah.
people can't
Absolutely.
consent to
Yes.
it. It's just rape. It's not consent. They're not able to understand
Yeah.
uh, the sophistications of human sexuality yet. It's
Yeah.
unclear at what age. It changes for different people. At what age um, they gain an understanding of sexuality. At what age you could say a particular person is able to consent. But
Well,
certainly, I think we can all agree that if you're like 5 years old, you're just being taken advantage of.
you can't. Yeah, you can't consent. No matter who you're having. No matter who's like attempting to have sex with them, they cannot consent. Even if it's a teenager, they still cannot consent in that case, and that's why it should always be illegal in that. Because there's all sorts of complications that can arise from that. It's not just psychological damage. There's also complications that can occur from, giving birth as well, because it can kill them. In the case
All
of
right,
like,
so Jamie, so we're agreed. We're agreed that pedophilia is wrong, but we're also agreed that it's wrong to quote unquote blame people for,
mhm.
what they're compelled by the universe or whatever to do. So then, like, how does that understanding help you to shift your reaction? Because my guess is like your reaction is much stronger about this when you're blaming Matt and blaming these people, even though you understand it's not their fault, than if you were to attribute their actions to something outside of them.
I should, well, I should look to their causal history if I can find it, but I'm trying. I try my best to, you know, have an educated guess on what could have caused them to be like this, um, with their irrational blame and irrational accusations and stuff. But
Well, I think we know what it is. So again, the problem is, as human beings, we we add agency to actions. This is the
yeah,
problem.
we
The
shouldn't blame
problem,
people for mental illnesses. Bottom line, and
yes.
Matt's FTR, he claims to be a psychologist. Now I'm thinking, if he's a psychologist, then how comes um, he goes around accusing certain people, this and that and third, and then admits to wrongdoing afterwards, you know, but he shouldn't do it in the first
Right,
place.
and again, so like Mitch, yeah, you're right. The problem is blaming, people, attributing agency to people. But see, the thing is, we understand that. The four of us understand that, but it's not just about understanding it. In other words, like we can understand it intellectually, but how do we help Jamie to take that additional necessary step to basically act according to that understanding?
I think discussing the issue helps. I think this discussion is probably going to be beneficial to Jamie. I think he can.
I'm pretty sure you've had the same problems in the past, Channel, with like free will belief and stuff. Because I've seen George Ortega get like similar accusations made up about him. Someone called him a pervert because he wanted to teach kids that free will is an illusion. You know what I mean? It's insane.
Yeah, that's weird. That's like calling somebody a pervert because they're telling you that the Earth is round.
Mm. Yeah, it
Uh,
makes no
Right.
ano-
sense.
So, all right. So, Jamie, I've got a suggestion. Recount briefly, what Matt did, but like this time, the grammar and the syntax you use. In other words, like say it in the sense like, well, the universe made him do that, and the universe, or whatever. In other words, like to reflect your understanding. How would you
That's
phrase the situation?
that's that's a good way of putting it because I mean, saying that the universe caused him to do all this stuff um, is a perfect way of describing causality, isn't it?
Yeah.
Absolutely, and I think when you do that, all of a sudden, it just keys you in that, like, all of a sudden it's immoral. It's actually wrong for you to blame him for something that just like it's wrong to blame pedophiles for the pedophilia they're not in control of, it's actually also wrong for you to blame Matt for having his misunderstandings, his accusations, and all. So I think when you consider it from a moral perspective, it might actually help you to see it in the right way.
Yeah. Then in that case, I mean, I should just try and move on and forget about the matter altogether, But taking that step is going to be extremely difficult, especially since how deeply this has affected me and my mother, because me and my mother have had arguments that have been related to this sort of thing in several months ago. So.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, and I know it's difficult somewhat to just move on because when there's been some kind of a thing where somebody's blaming you for something, well, it still
Yeah,
bothers you, and I get that because even though we understand it's illogical, there's something bad, a feeling when
yeah,
somebody else is accusing us of something.
yeah, because people with other kinds of mental illnesses, right? And I defend them too because I believe uh, that it's not their fault either. Like schizophrenics or bipolar people, they've known to become violent once in a while. Not all of them do become violent. I want to clarify there, but some do become violent criminals, and they need to be separated from society to protect everyone and themselves. But I mean, it's this double standard in society that people create, and they seem to think that minor attractive people are this ultimate evil. This, they're, sometimes they're called demon spawn, if that makes any sense. Um, but we know that there's no such thing as demons. Um,
Yeah.
and then,
You know,
blaming someone for an attraction or a mental illness isn't really helping anything. You have to address the causes to eliminate it.
yeah.
Okay, so I was trying to make a remark about emotion. So people, when there's a provocative issue, Sam Harris, for example, is a public figure. He's a well-known scientist, atheist, hard determinist,
And he's
and yes, he's been criticized. Hello?
We're
yeah, we're
here.
still,
Okay, he's been criticized in the past for saying provocative things about Islam because people have very strong emotional reactions to strong issues. If they feel that an issue is a moral issue, they are influenced by their emotions, and sometimes it's very, very difficult for them to use their faculties for logic and reason. So, for example, pedophilia is a really bad action. And it is such a bad action, such a contemptible thing, that it affects people in a way. It shocks them. They're very scared.
the crime does, yes, but
Yeah, they're very scared that they might be unwittingly endorsing a behavior they find is horrific. So that can really influence what they're saying. They don't want to be fully reasonable when they're talking about things
yeah,
that are universally condemned.
Yeah.
So that is, I don't know that.
Yeah, I get what Mitch is saying. People, whenever there's a highly emotional topic, that tends to completely just blow out any logic that in that person's brain. They're not thinking, they're just acting emotionally. Because in this case, for example, since we're dealing with the topic of people who might be sexually attracted to children or something like that, well, it's fear that gets people freaked out. So their automatic fear response is anybody who they think is a pedophile. They either want to put them in jail right now or kill them or something. They just completely freak out. And I've seen the YouTube comments and stuff people say, and I
yeah. What
understand.
saying about Jack McClellan? I mean, he has no history of sex crimes, but some people even want to torture him. And I'm thinking, you want to torture this guy for his thoughts that he cannot even control. It's proven by neuroscience. There's no getting around it. There's mountains of evidence to suggest that not just pedophilia, but all mental illnesses are not a choice. Yeah, so
Yeah, and it's just weird. And the problem is that people, they react automatically out of fear and also based on revenge. Because why would you want to torture somebody? Like, what good is that going to help? You know, that's not going to do anything.
yeah,
Um,
and there's heavy free will belief against this guy. I've noticed this a lot, and I did my research about this guy. You know, the only thing he's been arrested for is violating a restraining order because he went to get some food. That was it, and he was taken to court and he had no convictions. You know, he moved from state to state, but as far as I'm aware, he hasn't molested any kids. He hasn't made or downloaded any child pornography. So, what crime is this guy guilty of? Are these people insane? Are they suggesting that we lock this guy up in prison for life for merely thinking about a crime? By that logic, we might as well just lock up people for fantasizing about murder and armed robbery and playing first-person shooter games with lots of gore in them. You know what I mean?
well,
Like I
exactly.
play shooters with, you know, gore in them. I play this um, game called Zombies. You know, you heard of Call of Duty, right?
I've heard
course.
of it. But
Yeah.
yeah, Jamie, they are being insane because that's what their reasoning leads to.
Mm.
What it leads to is they put everybody in jail or punish them in some other way before they've actually done a crime just because they might suspect. Like, and you gave good examples, you know, somebody plays a video game that's violent, so they are therefore basically saying that person's a murderer, even though they haven't actually killed anybody yet.
Mm.
Or that's just about as insane as if they put me in jail because they said I was a pedophile because I like My Little Pony. Because you know there was an idiot who said that.
Yeah, there was an idiot. There was an idiot who threatened to kill me on Facebook back in October because he thought me and my friends were pedophiles. Like you know, I sent you the screenshot of a death threat he sent because some comments I was making about Jack McClellan, comments I was making about comparing pedophiles to homosexuals, saying that their attraction is not a choice. Keyword
But
attraction. I'm not talking about
but to
inequality. That's
George's point, instead of launching into these ad hominem attacks, despite how uh, grossly unjust their attacks may have been, or you may perceive them to be, as George was, alluding to, we can't blame them for reacting the way they're reacting. As we've just discussed, one of the
so
reasons
I
that
can't blame
they're
More for sending me that death threat.
correct, you can't. Exactly. Well, I mean, you can, but it's illogical to do that. I'm not saying it's physically impossible for you to do it. I'm saying you shouldn't do it because it
Yeah,
doesn't make any sense to
because
them. We've just discussed some of the reasons why he's doing that. So he's obviously very much against pedophilia, has a strong emotional reaction, wants to completely distance himself from that. As
yeah,
Chandler pointed out, he's afraid that if he does not react in such a strong way, he might be endorsing what he considers to be, well, we all agree upon, is horrible behavior. The act itself is wrong. So the
yeah.
issue
We know
here
the act
is
itself is wrong, but what I'm saying is that you know there's a difference between thought and crime, and also I support the age of consent in my country, which is 16, which is the same in Canada and a lot of places, and other places in the world. And I told George Ortega this, I told Chandler Klebs this, and when I stated that on Sean Gawler's page, as well as saying I think it's wrong to punish kids for having sex with other kids, of similar age, he took
Okay,
that.
Jamie, I think what would help is because you keep going back to the differences between what you believe and what they say and all in the issues. So, but that's not really what we're addressing. What we're addressing is how to help you use this understanding that
Mm,
they don't have a free will to lessen your frustration, to lessen your anger at them and all.
yeah,
Because we understand that there's differences, but like for example, okay. How does it feel? How does it feel when you believe that it's wrong for you to blame them? It's actually immoral for you to blame them for something that they're not freely doing.
yeah. I've given this some thought, and this is one of the reasons why I've considered closing my YouTube profile and not coming back because I don't want to get I don't want to, waste my life arguing with unreasonable people and then end up saying things that I don't mean to people. Um, if I get angry enough, I will say, "Oh, I'm gonna punch you," or
All right,
you
but let's address that. So in other words, like, but what you're doing now is you're blaming yourself. You're
know,
saying, well, I mean, like, it is. In other words, like, you're doing something wrong to blame them, but it's not your wrong either, right?
mhm,
So in other words, like, so like, it really, you want to kind of like get an understanding of this, that like basically they're victims and you're a victim of this. The universe, whatever's doing, is doing this to you. How does that help to understand it?
well, I guess in a way, this indirectly has made you and Chandler and a few other people on my friends list. This has also made you victims because, on the one hand, you may not want to hear it sometimes, but it becomes beneficial to discuss it, to address the issue, to help each other get over the issue and move on from it.
But can you see that, like, when you're kind of like blaming them, like you're saying, like, you might want to like delete your Facebook account. I mean, there may be a good reason for
Not
you to do
Facebook,
that.
but YouTube. I would
Okay, yeah, because
consider
I deleted my Facebook account because like I was distracted, like it wasn't, I wanted to do more important things. So, but like the important thing for you to understand that it's not your fault either. You
mhm.
know, it's nobody's fault. But how does that make you feel when you see the issue from that perspective?
I'm not really sure, but I told Channel Klebs about this PC blob guy when I told him I asked my friend's daughter in real life what's it like being a girl. Um, that's not that's not perverted in any shape or form, but he was getting hostile towards me as if I was some sort of pervert or pedophile or whatever, and that I get several like stupid things said about me for you know, I just see it as irrational. You know what I mean? I just don't know how to deal with it.
And if someone is irrational, you can't look. Here are your choices. Here are the tools. Here are things you could logically do. If someone disagrees with you,
Yes.
you can try to help them understand your position. If someone is unreasonable, then they are unreasonable, and you
Hmm.
will not be able to help them understand your position. But blame, guilt, ad hominem attacks, all that is really unnecessary. And perhaps after the discussion we've had today, and after
Yeah.
coming, after having more of these situations in the future, you will become a person who is more understanding
Yeah.
about this.
Yeah, and it's just very important to point out that we can't blame Jamie for being upset over the things these people are saying, but we also can't blame these people for saying those things because those are based on their thoughts, which they did not choose, which came from what they've been taught all their life. And so what happens with me is the infinite regress just kind of dissipates the blame, and I'm like, who do I blame? You're left with, I don't know, the universe or God or the Big Bang if you believe that stuff. But like, so the blame is gone under this no free will paradigm.
And from my personal experience, that helps. When I'm like tempted to be angry with somebody over something and I remind myself that they're not to blame, then yeah, it's really hard to blame the universe or God or whatever. It's hard, it's so much harder.
Yeah, and you know what's interesting about that, George, is that maybe this is a good time to end this episode and then address that. Address, well, how can somebody blame the universe or God or something like that? We can move on into that topic.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Okay, you've been listening to Free Will, Science, and Religion with Chandler Klebs, Mitch J., George Ortega, and Jamie Soden, and we've been trying to help our friend Jamie not blame people for blaming him and falsely accusing him of stuff, and I hope it helped, and if not, we'll keep trying. But anyway, I hope you learned something listening to this episode. Thank you for listening. Bye.